In 2023, motorsports fans saw some of the most spectacular and terrifying crashes ever. Race series around the world, from Formula 1 to NASCAR and everything in between, produced some awesome racing and intense moments, and with those came some unbelievable crashes that will be etched into the history of motorsports forever. So get ready, because in this video, we're showing you the worst motorsports crashes of 2023. First up is this utterly unbelievable wreck from the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Talladega. This super speedway race took a very dramatic turn when a multi-car pileup happened involving almost half the field. Daniel Hemric's car came off worst and took a nasty hit, going airborne and flipping upside down. Hemric collided with multiple other cars in one of the biggest crashes of the Xfinity season, landing on its roof and sliding across the track violently. His windshield shattered from the impact and his car was completely destroyed, leaving commentators hoping that Hemric was unharmed in this scary pileup.
And there goes Daniel Hemric off the bumper of Sheldon Creed. And this is the big one here at Talladega.
Oh my.
Got one upside down. Is that Daniel Hemric on his roof?
Upside down.
Another series that had its fair share of huge hits was Formula 1, and the driver who had the worst crash all year was definitely Lance Stroll. During qualifying for the Singapore Grand Prix, he was pushing his Aston Martin to the limit, but while coming around the final corner, disaster struck for the Canadian. He lost control of his car in a flat-out corner and was sent into a tank slapper. With no time to save it, he smashed into the wall in a horrific fashion, tearing his car to pieces. It was the biggest hit of the year, and luckily Stroll walked away without serious injuries. Let's go back to the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Talladega for this next memorable moment. This time it was Blaine Perkins who was on the wrong side of fate at the tricky Talladega track. Known for its unpredictable racing action, Perkins and the rest of the pack were trying to avoid another driver who had spun and hit the wall hard, and that's when the nightmare unfolded for Perkins. He was hit from behind and his car immediately went airborne, flying through the air backwards in an unbelievable scene. It landed hard on its roof and began barrel rolling numerous times, all while traveling 180 miles per hour. With every roll, more body panels were ripped off his car, taking a series of horrible hits along the way.
So this is Blaine Perkins. You see he's going to get hit. The car's going to catch the air, land right here on the roof, and here comes the barrel roll.
Right when you get sideways like that, it starts to bite, and then off it goes.
Sticking with NASCAR for now, another driver who had an outrageous flip was Ryan Blaney. But this crash was unlike any other. In fact, it was so unbelievable that it made news headlines around the world, sending shivers down the spine of everyone who viewed this monster wreck. Preece was turned on the straight by another driver and was sent onto the grass, flipping instantly. His car began barrel rolling so violently that it was thrown into the air at a height that was never seen before. The hits he took were the scariest in recent memory, and his car eventually caught fire when it came to a rest. Luckily, Preece avoided serious injuries in this once-in-a-lifetime moment. And if you'd like to be kept up to date with the best motorsports content, please consider liking this video and hitting subscribe for more quality content just like this. With that being said, let's have a look at this ridiculous roll from the premier series of American open-wheel racing. During practice for the IndyCar race at Mid-Ohio, Simon Pagenaud unfortunately had the worst moment in his whole racing career. While coming towards turn 4, flat out at almost 200 miles per hour, he hit the brakes, but nothing happened. And to make it worse, he was approaching a runoff that goes downhill. He attempted to minimize the damage by going sideways, but his car flew into the air and made a horrible impact off the ground, sending it into one of the craziest barrel rolls ever. After his car was ripped to pieces from the multiple impacts and he was thrown around like a ragdoll, his car hit the wall and came to a rest. Pagenaud missed the rest of the season due to concussion, but hopes to return to racing soon. Another unforgettable crash from this year's IndyCar season happened at their biggest race of the year, the Indy 500. Felix Rosenqvist hit the wall and spun the turn 1 to turn 2 short chute, and his car shot back onto the track into the path of other drivers. Some avoided him, but Kyle Kirkwood, traveling at over 220 miles per hour, wasn't as lucky. He clipped Felix's car and his wheel was sheared off, flying over the fencing and narrowly avoiding disaster by missing the crowd in the grandstand. His car was sent straight into the wall hard, flipping over and skating down the track upside down at unbelievable speed. It was one of the many wild crashes from this race, and one of the most jaw-dropping of 2023.
Oh! Felix in the wall, big time.
This is going to be a big hit right here. I don't know if he's going to keep it out of the turn 2 wall. Oh no! Kirkwood!
Ooh.
Kirkwood upside down!
Let's switch over to the world of endurance racing for this next crash, which saw an outrageous wreck at the world-famous Spa-Francorchamps track. In the World Endurance Championship 6 Hours of Spa race, Renger van der Zande was piloting his top-level Cadillac hypercar and battling with the 2 Ferraris. Moments later, his race was over. The Eau Rouge corner claimed another victim in the treacherous wet conditions, as Van der Zande slid straight off the track and hit the wall in an absolutely massive crash. His car was instantly smashed to pieces, with almost every panel being ripped off, and debris shattered everywhere. It was one of the biggest crashes of the season, but luckily he came out uninjured. The world of GT racing also had its fair share of big accidents, so let's check out this one between Ian Duggan and James Townsend. The pair were fiercely racing each other during the Donington Park round of the British GT Championship, when they came together in a smash that shook the whole paddock. Townsend attempted an overtake on Duggan, but when he moved out to pass him, he instead found himself in the rear bumper of Duggan's car. Duggan smashed the tyre barrier and it wrecked his car on impact, while Townsend suffered a similar fate. Both drivers were miraculously okay, but head-on collisions like this are never nice to see. Now for something a bit different, in the form of the UK National Legends Cars Championship. The series took on the notorious Cadwell Park in the UK for round 5 of their championship this year, but it turned out to be far from a normal race. Renowned racer John Mickle was fiercely battling 2 other cars, going wheel-to-wheel for position while flat out on the long straight. Out of nowhere, they demonstrated the literal meaning of wheel-to-wheel by making contact. It sent Mickle's car wildly out of control, onto the grass and crashing extremely violently. He rolled almost instantly and started barrel rolling an insane amount of times. The rolls were amongst the worst ever seen in all of motorsports, with his car being ripped to pieces in the process. We think it was a contender for the worst crash of the year. Another chaotic moment from this year's motorsports calendar came from the series with one of the longest names, the British and Racing Sports Car Club Fiesta Junior Championship. But when the series visited Donington Park, driver Jenson O'Neill's day was cut short after this absolutely monster crash. The pack of Ford Fiestas were coming through the high-speed, downhill complex when O'Neill's day came to a sudden stop. He made contact with another driver and was pushed straight off the road, at one of the worst possible places. With nothing he could do to control his car on the grass, he headed for the sand trap at full speed and went airborne. The Fiesta then violently flipped over, rolling multiple times and completely wrecking it along the way. It was a horrific crash to witness, but luckily the roll cage did its job and O'Neill was unharmed.
Oh no, that's Jenson O'Neill going airborne and over he goes, and that is a big crash for Jenson O'Neill going down at the bottom of the old hairpin. That is a big one indeed, a little bit of contact I think with Finn Leslie.
Back to single-seaters for this next one in the Formula Regional European Championship. This series unfortunately had many accidents this year, but this one at Zandvoort is heart-stopping. In the soaking wet conditions, the yellow flags were flying, but some drivers appeared to still be racing. Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. smashed the barrier and bounced back onto the track, straight into the path of the rest of the pack. He was driven straight into by Meyer Wöch, causing a massive impact that also collected 2 other cars. It's fair to say that the repair bill that day was a painful one. And while we're talking about big damage to race cars, it doesn't get much more intense than this one. This scary crash at the Formula E Rome ePrix will go down in the history books as one of the worst crashes in recent memory. Sam Bird's Jaguar spun uncontrollably at high speed and smashed the wall hard, and his car couldn't have come to rest in a worse position, right in the middle of the track. It left no room for other cars to avoid it, and they found that out the hard way. Several drivers hit the wall trying to avoid Bird, taking big damage in the process. But it was Sebastian Buemi and Eduardo Mortara who came off the worst, driving into Bird's car at high speed. The three drivers suffered massive hits and completely destroyed the race cars. Now let's make a quick transition to the world of drag racing for this brutal blow. Chris Thorne was lining up for the NHRA Pro Mod eliminations at the Nevada Nationals when disaster struck. When he took off, his Chevrolet Camaro started pulling towards the center line, which is never a good sign. Before he knew it, he was pointing straight towards the concrete walls of the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He had a massive head-on crash, pulling seriously high Gs and wrecking his car in the process. His Camaro went airborne, flipped and rolled in the blink of an eye, and slid down the track upside down in one of the wildest rides of his life.
Sidney Frigo leap together. Chris Thorne going towards the center line. He's all over the place. Oh no! Hard into the left side wall. Chris Thorne.
Now, the crash we showed you earlier from Donington Park wasn't the only huge one from the famed UK track in 2023. The cars in the Mini Challenge UK series, Sam Smith suffered this scary smash in his Mini Cooper. With 4 minutes left on the clock, drivers were pushing hard to gain a few final positions, but Smith didn't get the chance to overtake anyone, because on his way into turn 1, his brakes completely failed. He was sent hurtling into the corner at full speed and was forced to drive directly into another car, wiping both out of the race. Smith's Mini continued spinning wildly until it hit the wall, and both cars suffered big damage. He was sent to hospital, but thankfully avoided serious injuries. We're moving back to GT racing for this next crash, and what a crash it was. The Macau GP is known to be one of the toughest and most dangerous races in the world. The walls of the tricky street track are never far away, and driver Adeli Fong found that out this year while racing in the FIA GT World Cup. He was coming through a high-speed section when he lost control of his Audi R8 and smashed the outside wall as hard as you could imagine. The impact was so severe that half of his car momentarily disappeared into the wall, and it completely demolished both his car and the barrier. The track was littered with debris, and his Hello Kitty liveried R8 was left needing a bit of attention. The 6 hours of Spa race in the World Endurance Championship produced many incidents this year, including the Cadillac crash from earlier in this video, but this one from Ferrari may have been even worse. Diego Alessi was driving his 488 GTE Evo through Eau Rouge in his practice for the race, but when he got to the top of Rodillion, he was in for a nasty surprise. Another 488 GTE Evo, being driven by Thomas Fleur, was sitting right on the racing line and left Alessi with nowhere to go. He tried to avoid him, but ended up in a massive shunt at the infamous corner that produces so many big crashes. Both cars were destroyed due to the crash happening at huge speed, and made for a big cleanup. The streets of Macau served up another multi-car pileup this year, this time thanks to the TCR Asia Challenge series with this huge accident. Lam Car lost control of his Audi through the high-speed corner and sent his car headfirst towards the outside wall, hitting it with some serious might. The Tech Pro barrier bounced him back across the track and into the path of multiple other drivers, causing a huge pileup. 4 cars in total were involved and knocked out of the race.
Circuit, isn't it?
Yeah. So here it is again. So Lam Car, he just loses it. Pure and simple. Can't slow the car down, hits the barrier, comes across the road, and Ryan Wong thinks, I'm going to go that way, but he ends up sort of hitting the brakes and spinning and being hit.
As we've just seen, GT racing often produces huge crashes, and this was proven again in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Asia race in Sepang this year. Maurice Chen was driving his Porsche 911 down the long back straight of the famous Malaysian track when he suffered a brake failure at the worst possible part of the circuit. He headed into the gravel at full speed and skipped across it in an instant. It barely slowed him down, and he hit the barrier at the other side of the track at terrifying speed. He broke the tyre barrier and the fence, and his car became lodged in the middle of the barrier in a very scary moment. And just because a car is smaller and has less power, doesn't mean it can't be involved in some massive accidents. This was proven by this crash for Jerzy Pinkiewicz this year in the Renault Clio Cup at the Red Bull Ring. Coming through the last sector, he made contact with a car that was rejoining the track, and out of nowhere, his Clio was flipped over and rolled 6 times in a horrible accident. It smashed almost every panel of his Clio and caused massive damage, sending him home with a very costly repair bill.
And Savoia, he ended up on the gravel, couldn't get the car turned. And did Spinkovic roll? Yes, he did. Goodness me. Well, I'm glad to say that we've already seen Jerzy Spinkovic out of the car.
And for our last crash of this video, we're heading back to fan-favourite Spa-Francorchamps track for this heart-stopping smash. Erwin Creed was attempting an overtake on John Nelson for 3rd position when he misjudged his overtake, causing huge consequences. The mistake meant that both cars were knocked out of the race, and it sent Nelson straight into the barriers at high speed, severely damaging both cars in the process. However, the LMP3 cars protected both drivers, who walked away uninjured. And with that scary shunt, we bring this video to an end. With cars smashed to pieces, millions worth of damage, and championships changed, these were the worst motorsports crashes of 2023. Please leave a comment and let us know which crash you thought was the worst, and tell us if we missed any. Please smash the like and subscribe buttons for more motorsports content. This has been Racers Reverie. See you in the next video.